Oh, yes, we're live. Yes, we're live. Yeah, that's true. And every Ask Away, because she's in the chat going TikTok.
Yeah.
We're live now.
I
Hi,
ain't even got a
everybody.
watch.
Hello.
I don't have a watch.
Okay, comment in the live chat right now if you're complaining that like Steve wasn't live at exactly like
Yes.
90 Pacific time, noon
You're
Eastern, and yet you were waiting for Steve to come on. It's like that.
It's-
You
We'd like to
blame
announce
us
this
too.
fundraiser to get Steve a watch.
It's like the hey motherfucker, I have a watch. It's like it's like it's like the recording session in Pod People, the great Mystery Science Theater movie, where they do their ridiculous song, and then the lead singer is like pissed off. He's the one who goes, "It stinks," and he's going around to the singers and telling them what they did wrong. And he comes up to the one girl doing the backup singing, and he goes, "And you were half a beat late." And it's like, so sorry for being half a beat late, everybody, but we're here.
We need more cowbell.
We need more cowbell. That's what it is. I got a fever.
And if you're Billy Joel, we need more cocaine.
Yes. Although, you know what? Did Billy actually have a coke problem? I mean, I don't know if he ever
I don't
was
know,
like
actually.
I don't know if he ever
was a
used
boozer.
drugs. Well,
You gotta risk it
I
for
feel like there's
quite
strong
a few
pressure
times.
in a courtroom.
Yeah, I mean, he was a musician in the 1970s and 80s. He probably
yeah, I'm sure. I mean, yeah,
In the-
I'm sure he
I
did
grew up
something.
In the 80s,
They
80s
did-
cocaine was like a party favor.
Yes.
It was necessary, like the Ritz
I'm-
crackers
yeah.
and cheddar cheese.
I'm
You
sure
needed
he did.
cocaine to have a
I'm
good
sure.
party.
I'm sure he did something. And like I've loved these days is a song where it's sung with a very sort of nostalgic view of people who used to live a very wild drug fueled lifestyle. Maybe you can read something into that. But then again, Captain Jack is kind of an anti-drug song. Like not overtly, but like it paints a pretty bleak picture,
I mean,
of
to
what
be
it.
honest, when you're
Yeah.
in the lifestyle, you see your friends having a fun, and then you get to see your friends gone. So
Yeah.
I see both
Yeah.
sides of this. Yeah.
Yeah.
And on that
I'm-
note,
I'm glad Isaiah has his hand up, and I'll get to you in a second. I just want to express my appreciation. I did not expect to be talking about Billy Joel this much on the stream today. So I as a longtime fan of Billy Joel, I appreciate it. Isaiah, your
You're
hands up. What do
welcome.
you have to say? Thank you.
So last Sunday, for the very, very first time, I saw the movie the Shawshank Redemption.
What did you think?
Oh my God, it was such an incredible movie, but especially the ending. It I was
Yeah.
like, I cannot believe it took me this long to see this movie.
It's one of those feel good endings that really works. Like it doesn't feel like they're just throwing something in there to make the audience happy. Like it really works. It's a really good movie.
It doesn't feel tacked on. It doesn't feel.
Yeah.
I mean, if you really pull it apart, does it feel unbelievable? Probably. But the movie doesn't give you any reason to pick it apart.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
it's an earn your happy ending.
Very
Yeah,
much
for
so.
sure. And but
Rita
even
Hayworth
like
in Shawshank Redemption was also a great story.
Mhm.
It's
Oh,
one
yeah.
of the King novels or novellas, as
Yeah.
he calls them, that he just did a wonderful job with that, The Body, and Apt Pupil. Those aren't really horror stories. They're really gripping, though.
His non-horror stuff can be fantastic. Like I know like the horror novels is what, bought him a mansion in Maine, but like, yeah, his non-horror stuff is fantastic.
And
Shawshank
Shawshank Redemption was
at Fenway.
Huh?
As
I said
first row
Shawshank-
seats at every game at Fenway.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, you just
Those don't come cheap either.
No.
you just get
No.
the feeling with Stephen King that a lot of his horror stuff is so groundbreaking, but you feel like that at some point he was just doing that because it was making him money, and any other project he did was a passion project that he truly cared about.
He wrote under the name Richard Bachman for a long time because it was another way to keep putting work out.
Yeah.
It was when the publishing industry worked a lot differently than it does now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's
there
sort
was
of
a
the
point in the
one
80s
for
and
me,
90s.
one for them kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because in the 80s and 90s, he was really cranking them out. Like,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Lessons learned, your hands up.
Yeah, well, I was going to say basically that movie really changed my attitude toward the whole incarceration thing, right? It's like before that, I had a very typical, oh, these people deserve what they're getting. And then you see that movie and you go like, even if they do, you still have a very corrupt, carceral system that exploits.
I was cheering when Bob Gunton's character got his comeuppance. I was cheering like a motherfucker.
Oh yeah, the warden. Yeah,
I was like, you bastard, prepare to reap the fucking whirlwind, you dipshit.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing about like the message of the movie as far as, the need for prison reform and that kind of thing, I think that's one of the reasons why the character of Red is so important, because like they do the thing with Tim Robbins' character where he's innocent. He claims he's innocent the entire time and he's been wrongfully convicted. So there's that over there, and that's kind of a cliche. But Red, it's clear from the beginning, he did what he did to get sent to prison. Like he was guilty of what he did. But ultimately, it doesn't really matter. Like the point isn't, well, you were guilty, so you deserve to be here. It's, well, okay, yeah, I was guilty. I deserve to be punished somehow. But do I deserve to spend my entire life here for something that I did when I was young and foolish? Like, does that mean that I get to just basically live out my entire life, except for presumably the last few years of it when he finally gets out?
The character who gets out and kills himself, and Red, who you think at the end of the movie he's going to off himself like the other guy did, and then he leaves, and that cathartic feeling he gets by saying, I'm on parole and I'm away and nobody knows where I'm at. I don't know what's going to happen. And it's just so uplifting. And that final scene where the two of them meet on the beach is just.
And he says, and again, like just if you want to look at the movie through a lens of, what it has to say about our prison system, when he breaks parole to go find Andy, he says, for the second time in my life, I'm guilty of a crime. He spent like 40 years in prison, and the second crime in his life ever that he commits is breaking parole. It's, And again, the movie doesn't slap you in the face with that, but it's there. It's like, this guy was not a danger to society. He was a kid who did something bad when he was a kid and deserved to be punished for it somehow, but wasn't like a danger to society going forward. And we locked this guy away for his entire life. And yes, and that ending, what I love about that final shot is that when they finally meet, it's super, super long distance. Like you don't get the big, schmaltzy, two guys hugging and shaking hands. And it's like I think it fades to black, like right at the moment that they actually reach each other. It's so well done. It's so subtle. Like even when you get the happy ending, the movie causes you to pull back, and it doesn't give you every single thing you want. It gives you like, no, they found each other, they're together, but we're not going to give you, close up on the reunion. Yeah.
And let's be clear. They're really good actors. They have great expressive faces, and they still resisted that temptation.
Well, because it was directed by Frank Darabont, who was a fantastic director. Who was just a brilliant filmmaker. Okay, Russell, your hand was up. You go first.
Okay, real quick on Shawshank. And The Body, which was later dubbed Stand By Me. I love the creative choice of, and Stephen King even said he loved it, like making Morgan Freeman the character of Red, even though it was written as a white guy. I love that The Body uses Gordy stuff instead of his best friend Chris, which was written in the short novella. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
To nitpick novella and novel and all that, for people who don't know, and I'm Dan is like going, okay, I know what you're going to say. It's simply a matter of word count. So it's $50,000 or less is the novella, and everything after that is a novel. So saying that it's a short novella.
I resisted. I thought that's redundant, and I chose not to say
It's the rise. The writer me go like, but I gotta say it.
It's the rise of the pedants. The pedants are coming.
It's not really a novel unless it was written in the novel region of France.
The novel region of France.
Sparkling short story.
Anything else is sparkling fiction.
No, let's be honest.
It's not existentialism if it's not from France. It's just sparkling.
It's been around for so long that is it still truly novel?
That's true. Yeah, why are we still calling them novels? They've been around for 200 years. Can't we call it something else?
You're not even
Can't we call it something else? But then, no, Russell.
What?
I'm telling you,
we've been live for 11 minutes, maybe 10 because Steve was late.
Yeah.
The puns have started.
I'm glad that we got there eventually. But Russell makes a good point about it's completely okay to change things from the source material. I know that there are certain people, especially if you have like a really close attachment to the source material.
Yeah.
If you watch the movie or the TV series or whatever the adaptation of it is, and you see that they've done something different, they've changed a character or they've cut out a plot line that you liked or whatever, there's the instinct to be like, no, they changed it. But like the book is the book and the movie is the movie, and you need to give the movie space to be the movie.
Arguably, it has to be different. It's a different form.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah, like two examples of like
the firm in the novel
adaptation being a lot better is Invincible and The Boys. Apparently, like the comics, while respected, they're not nearly as high as high of a regard as the television adaptations. So that's pretty neat. Because usually the narrative is that the adaptation never lives up to the source material. So it's nice to have that inverted occasionally.
I know I'm working on a video that probably won't be ready for a few more weeks. I don't have it. It's not actually on my schedule yet, but I've been working on the script here and there as I've had time about the various movie adaptations that have been made of The Great Gatsby, which is my favorite book. And one of the problems with them, at least with the more recent ones, the version they made in 1949 doesn't really have this problem, but it has other problems. But one of the big problems with more recent attempts to adapt The Great Gatsby has been they were all made after the book had become The Great Gatsby, like this towering work of literature. And so they approach the material with too much reverence. It's like they're like, we're making a movie of this great book, and so it must,
it's too precious.
Yeah, it's too precious. And you can't, at least from my way of thinking, like you can't approach it that way. You have to be like, okay, no, what's the story? What's this about? Yeah. You break it down like you would any other story.
They get the Nicholas Meyer treatment.
Yeah, exactly. They need to find someone who thinks about The Great Gatsby the way Nicholas Meyer thought about Star Trek. I don't give a shit about this. This is just a story. I'm going to tell it the best way I can.
Or Nicholas Meyer's Shakespeare, not Shakespeare, Sherlock
Holmes. Novel. Yeah. Oh, but the thing is, the great thing about Nicholas Meyer is he actually is a huge Sherlock Holmes nerd.
Yeah.
But
and
he's
still
able
willing to tell his own story.
Yeah.
Or
he's able to have the separation. Yeah. He's able to Yeah,
Nicholas Meyer is just an amazing filmmaker, just in general. His The Day After still holds the title for the most watched TV movie in history, right?
Yeah, I don't know how much Meyer himself deserves credit for that, but yes, that is true. I think everybody wanted to see
we're the ones watching it. We should get the credit.
That's right. Nicholas Meyer didn't make it the most watched. Of course, I don't think I watched it either. I was like 4 when it came on. But
proletarian watcher. Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, it's like the and the other thing about like the Great Gatsby movies is they all try, not all of them, but again the 3 more recent ones have all tried to they try to put the text into the movie, and so much of the text in The Great Gatsby isn't dialogue. It's just description, it's just the prose, and that's not how movies work. You can't do that.
Show not tell.
Yeah. And they try to do it like they usually try to do it by, they give Nick voiceover because Nick is the speaker in the novel. So they give Nick a bunch of voiceover. So basically, whoever the actor who plays Nick can just read the book to us. And that, I'm sorry, I love the book. I love the book. I love the writing of the book. Dana knows that because we just read it together recently. Dana hates The Great Gatsby. I love The Great Gatsby. I love the style. I love the writing. I love the prose. I don't need to hear any of it in the movie.
So what's this about voicing you?
So do I get?
Dana is like a book about the Gilded, a fictional book about the Gilded Age. I am shocked.
I know. I tried to tell her it's critical, but she didn't care. I'm like, you're not supposed to like all these people.
It's critical in the same way that what do you call it? Forget who the quote is about being impossible to make an anti-war movie because any movie containing war will almost by definition glorify it.
Yeah, it's true. Well, and it's complicated because like even, I mean, it's, you know, you're with Gatsby, you're trying to figure out how does Nick feel about these characters. And then you're also trying to figure out how does Fitzgerald feel about these characters, because he and Nick aren't necessarily always thinking and feeling the same things. And, you know, with Nick,
well, I don't know how I feel about it. I've never read it.
Well, then that's a good, then you have a perfect excuse. But like
I've never read it either.
Well, it's not that long of a book. I mean, I'm not saying you have to read it. You can go through your life and be perfectly happy never reading The Great Gatsby. But I mean, it's not a super long book.
Any movie adaptation of it.
If I had to recommend one, it would probably be the more recent one, the Baz Luhrmann one, even though I detest Baz Luhrmann as a filmmaker. That's the, Leonardo DiCaprio and Carey Mulligan and Tobey Maguire are the three leads in that one. And I've said before, I need to go back and rewatch it for this video I'm writing. I haven't for a while. But once you get past about the first half hour and Baz Luhrmann gets all of his Baz Luhrmann bullshit out of his system, it actually settles down and becomes a pretty good movie.
I was saying, and also with Baz Luhrmann, like actually putting the spectacle on the screen is like the one thing he's actually good at.
It's like, okay, you can actually get away with it this time because it's part of the point of the story. So, you know, just don't Baz Luhrmann it all up. Just, you know, don't forget that there's supposed to be people in the story.
I'm gonna disconnect for a moment and join on my computer because it's just been a weird, but it's working now.
All right, cool. See you in a little bit.
Brian, I meant to say Philip Hoffman, not Mark Hoffman. Is that the one with Philip Hoffman in it?
Is he in it? I can't remember. I'm not sure if he's in it or not. It's been so long since I've seen it. I can't remember if Philip Seymour Hoffman is in it or not. He might be. He was in everything until you know a certain point.
Yes, until he
just called him away.
Yes, exactly. Brian, your hand has been up for a while. What do you have to say?
I'm doing old person's things today. I'm turning 59.
Oh, cool. Okay, and, congratulations.
We survived. And, I spent the last couple of days talking to some old friends. I moved to Omaha recently, about a year ago. And I had lived in Dubuque, Iowa previously. I'd lived up near Madison, Wisconsin for a couple of years. I've been talking to some old friends, and it's amazing how I always thought it was unbelievable in like Trek when you would have somebody communicating with somebody over a screen, and how do you get that connected and that involved and that emotionally invested in the situation? I'm finding out in my old age that technology sucks and it happens despite our best interest.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and I live here now. I live with my stepson and he's 35. And I have gotten a very, I always used to think of myself as a liberal. I'm beginning to think I'm more of a moderate now.
And, from exposure to the young people.
Something that he does and some of his friends do. But it's amazing to me how we watched Animal House the other day.
Oh, yeah.
It's a movie that I haven't seen in probably 15 years. And I'm a big Belushi fan.
Yeah.
And we watched the movie and I was amazed at how uncomfortable I was watching something from 1978 that I saw in the theater. You know, and we were talking about it, movies like Porky's and things like that came out at that
Revenge
time.
Revenge of the
Nerds. Oh man, yes. Yeah, big time.
Yeah, there's some dark stuff in that, and you don't even read
20 years ago.
Look at it after a period of time.
Are we talking about like the treatment of women in these movies?
Oh yeah,
well,
that's a big part of it. That's a big part of it. That's not the only thing, but that's a big part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, in Animal House, the scene where they go to the bar with the girls that they pick up at the college, and that whole scene. I understand why movie executives were nervous now.
Yeah,
the scene where the one guy has a chance to abuse a girl, and then the devil and angel on his shoulder, and the angel goes like, "I am proud of you." Oh, like, oh wow, he did the bare minimum by not raping somebody in their sleep. Great job.
Good job, man.
Like I said, I'm 59 years old.
Yeah,
the behavior that was acceptable when I was 18.
Yeah.
Well, not necessarily acceptable, but accepted.
Yeah.
Is no longer enough. And this whole expansion of our societal demands and treat people with respect, and it used to be boys will be boys and girls will be girls. That's not even true anymore.
Yeah, there's a critical mass of.
I've got a grandchild who's
there's a critical mass of people
non-binary, and it's very strange to deal with that as I can say it, an older person, but also having a connection with this person and feeling I raised them from did it again. I raised them from an infant, and now they're 22, and it's like, what the hell happened? How did this, what is this passage of time?
Yeah. It happened. I know I'm not as old as you are, but I'm going to be 44 this year, and I'm starting to feel a little of that too. Is not in an alarmed or upsetting way, but just like in kind of a wondering, like, wow.
My thing is, I kind of, because I'm, Steve, I'm about your age. I'm 46, and I look at, and I think probably you and I probably think about things when it comes to like the politics of it in a similar way. Is that I look at the young people and what are they doing, and I'm like, if it makes me uncomfortable, but they're all doing it, I'm probably missing something.
Exactly.
And and that's kind of how I avoid that, becoming a conservative, because my worldview hasn't shifted while the world has.
Yeah.
You
have to be. Go ahead.
Sorry. A lot of people have an object permanence problem. Like Schrodinger's cat. Like, oh, does the cat exist anymore when the box is closed? Has the cat just died or disappeared? It's like, does the light exist anymore when the refrigerator door is shut? Well, that's how some people
are going at light speed. You turn on the headlights. What happened?
They think that autism only started existing once we knew what to call it. When no, obviously autistic people have been around for like thousands of years. Same with trans people. They think that was made up by Tumblr in the last 20 years or so. Chaya Rychek only heard about trans people 4 years ago. That's how she doesn't know anything about them. I freaking hate her.
In my adult voting life, we've seen a whole shift on the political spectrum too. I grew up at the time that Reagan was running against Carter, and that was a screwed up mess from the word go. We had 8 years of Reagan, then 4 years of Bush 1, then 8 years of Clinton, 8 years of Bush 2, and that was another. I mean, people don't remember freaking out at 2000 about the Supreme Court deciding the election.
I do, yeah.
I mean, I do, but a lot of young people now who are in their 20s don't remember that. That's true.
My point was just that
such a rough first election.
My point was just that we have a lot of people who seem to think that if you stop calling a thing, it magically stops existing. If we just force all the trans people to de-trans, then there won't be any more. No, there'll still be trans inside. They just won't be safe to show it.
Plus, it won't prevent the birth of future trans people.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's part of the condition.
Yeah, it's also why they resist these, like, they say the cis is a slur because, like, they don't want to, like, accept the change or anything like that. Or when you don't have, like, words to describe something as a word, it's almost like it's non-existent as a word. And, like,
yeah. But the thing about, like, autism, they seem to think that autism didn't exist until we made up a name for it.
And it was caused by
it's like, oh, we didn't have so many autistic people this many decades ago. Well, no, we're just better at recognizing it now. It's not because of something in the water.
It's not stigmatized as much as it used to be.
Mm-hmm. It is really it is incredible how much it's just a lot of it is just trying to keep things in mind, you know, like what CMAC was saying a minute ago too about, you know, like your values haven't necessarily changed, but times have changed, like society has progressed. A new generation has come in with its own perspective and its own sensitivities and its own values, and they see things that you don't. They pick up on things that you didn't necessarily notice on your own. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's what's supposed to happen. That's how things move forward. That's how progress happens.
And on some level, too, it's a credit to our generation that we move things so that they could then focus on these other things.
Yeah.
This is why I call it an object permanence issue, or like compare it to Schrodinger's cat, because there is a certain stage of development where when you're playing peekaboo with an infant, they get really excited when they see your face. It's because when you're covering their face, they really think you've disappeared for a sec.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny too, because when I was 18 years old back in 1983, in the old days,
before I was born,
I went to the doctor with a sore throat. He took a needle biopsy and I was diagnosed with cancer. I had 2 surgeries before the end of the year. My thyroid was removed. I had some lymph nodes removed from the right side of my neck. And I have seen MRIs, CT scans, PET scans, and changes in technology that are just, medically speaking, that are just incredible and just astounding. I mean, I remember going to see Star Trek the Motion Picture and a big article in Time magazine about Dr. McCoy's medical bed and how we're working on that. And maybe someday we'll have it. And the first time I got a CT scan, it was like, oh my God, I'm in Star Trek.
They did it.
Yeah. If we can get the hypo spray now, everything's cool.
Can we do some of that?
EpiPens.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. An EpiPen is kind of, you're right. Wow.
Yeah. Oh God, I should refuel mine because, like, I have an egg allergy. It's a moderate one, so it's not like rush me to hospital if I accidentally eat eggs. But it's like, I gotta say, is this made with eggs? I have to know. I also vomit as well.
They're also working on improving the hypo spray technology. Like
just something I want to bring up.
Hypo sprays, though, they've developed some. They're not particularly effective.
I got the hypo gun with the swine flu in the 70s. They had a gun with the arrows connected to it. It was like
in the military,
an impact hammer.
Wow. Well, you know what I was going to say also, like, when you keep in mind that, you know, society just naturally tends to move forward, and you can either move with it or you can get left behind. Like, it's kind of up to you. But you can't do anything about the fact that it changes. Like, that kind of change is inevitable and irresistible.
The one constant in the universe is change.
Yes, indeed. How philosophical. But there are certain things that don't change. You know, like, I'm always amused every once in a while you hear people, usually like disgruntled parents, you know, they'll say like, oh, kids today. And it's usually like, kids today, when I was a kid, we used to go play outside, and kids today just want to stay on their phones or on their iPads, or, you know. And I always notice, because when the weather's nice around here, there's a park like right near my house that I go for walks in. And I frequently will see kids at the same age when I would go outside with my friends and just run around and play, doing the exact same fucking thing. And, you know, a couple years ago, I made a note of it, and I've mentioned it a few times. I was going for a walk, and I saw 2 kids playing in a pile of dirt. Just like we used to when I was a kid. Like, they didn't have any electronics. They didn't even have any toys. They were just running around, climbing up, kicking dirt on each other. Like, they were playing in a pile of dirt, and they were as happy as could be. A couple weeks ago, it got warm enough for me to take a walk. There were 2 kids just throwing a tennis ball against a wall. So, like, it's not like kids don't play outside.
And
it's just that, you know,
also we've eliminated so many.
Our noses are in the phone, so we don't notice it.
We've eliminated we've eliminated the places for them to play.
I think it's more on the parents.
Yeah,
because if you look at it, you know, I'm at that tail end of Gen X where I fall on that Zennial, right? You know, kind of where, you know, when I was a kid, when I was in, you know, elementary school, junior high, like we were all quote unquote feral, you know, latchkey kids. Our parents didn't know where the hell we were. That's not the case anymore.
A big problem is we have eliminated third spaces that were just like okay for kids to hang out at. Because nowadays adults, if they see three kids, if they see three teens in one place at the time, they're like, oh, I better call the cops. Who knows what they're up to?
Yeah, exactly.
My rebuttal to that sentiment is always like, have you seen outside? It's like concrete.
Yeah, that's you need to have the spaces for kids to play in.
When I was a kid, we walked uphill in the snow both ways.
Also,
my kid calls me boomer, and it's the biggest insult he can throw.
How dare you?
Hey, boomer, how's it going? Oh, shut up, you little.
Something I wanted to bring up what you said about change being the one constant. It reminded me of this line from a comic. Like the bad guy, he's been fighting so long that he's starting to lose his mind, and the hero's again in his way again, and he just calms himself and like, nope, the chaos is the constant, and then it's just what he tells himself, that he has to expect things to always go wrong somehow, and have like another layer of planning behind that, and another layer of planning behind that, because the universe literally has it out for him.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's some wisdom to that too. You know,
as somebody with anxiety, I both embrace and fear that sentiment.
Yeah,
there's just something I like about that line. The chaos is the constant. You can't expect things to go exactly the way you want them.
Yeah.
Is entropy increasing or chaos and decay a byproduct?
It also prevents evil.
And I somehow just reminded myself of Jurassic Park. You know what I wish? Look, here's what bugs me about Jurassic Park's contribution to society is how much it popularized dinosaurs, but none of the animals that came before dinosaurs, which there were a ton of. It's why my favorite thing about Dominion was the Lystrosaurus scene. I love Lystrosaurus. It's one of the coolest like little pig dog things ever existed. But like so many kids and even just people like in their 30s and so on, they don't know that there was anything before dinosaurs, or they get things like Dimetrodon confused as a type of dinosaur, even though it died out ages before that did. There were so many cool animals, so many epics before that, but they're not popular because no one's made a Permian Park or a Cambrian Park movie out of them. So we need somebody to get the budget. We need somebody to make the Permian Park movie.
Or at least someone has to write the novel first, and
at least get someone from the asylum to make that their Jurassic Park ripoff movie. You know,
Jurassic Park.
College humor.
I just graduated from film school, so hit me up, guys.
I'm telling you. So do like do the cheap Jurassic Park knockoff, but call it like Cambrian Park or something, or pre-Cambrian Park where there's just nothing there. You know, like, well, they're they're microscopic. Come on,
Ediacaran Park. That would be boring. It'd just be like Cambrian half sponge, half animal things.
Cambrian Park sounds like something you really drink tea.
Driven show about the Cambrian species. You think they would have scrapped that barrel a long time ago?
Anyway, a couple of people have had their hands up for a while, so lessons learned. You go.
Yeah, going back to the whole conservative mindset, I always call the first tenet of conservatism the idea that your worldview and the real world the same thing, and so it's your worldview is permanent, always existed, and always will be. So whatever you thought it was cool at 8 or 10 or 11 years old, whatever, that is the way the world works, and they resist change because to challenge that is to challenge who they are. If I tell you this is different, if I tell you, oh, autism is not just a kid who cannot communicate and just sits on the floor all day, or trans people exist, like, no, because that means that I'm wrong, and I cannot be wrong. You have to be wrong. Is that they gravitated to that line in the Avengers movie, which they got completely wrong, which was, the world tries to move you and you push back, and I'm like, that's not what you think it means. It means that sometimes when people do wrong things, you're supposed to do the right thing morally and stand up for yourself.
Right.
Not be the stone that keeps everybody tied down to the ground.
Figures conservatives would misappropriate that line, right?
Yeah. Misinterpreting things is kind of their whole jam.
My fifth grade teacher once said to our class, always be open to the broad possibilities of life.
Yeah,
I thought that was a pretty good embracive attitude to have.
It's a good positive way to put it, because I think, I mean, I have very little, given the amount of trouble that they have caused and the amount of damage they have done to our society, and the amount that they have, held everything back from where it otherwise would be. I have very little sympathy for conservatives, especially for really like committed, hardcore, outspoken conservatives. But there is a point up to which I can sympathize with them a little bit, because the reason that I think a lot of them feel the way that you just described of, they have to think that they're right. They have to think that the world is as they think it is because there's a lot about the world that is scary, that is unsettling, and not just on the human level, just existentially. Life can be a really scary, unsettling thing. And it's kind of unsettling to realize how contingent so many things we take for granted are, even
our own. I've noticed is they're getting basically everything they want lately. All the people that they hate are getting oppressed. And yet these conservatives are just getting angrier. Because they're getting everything they want, but it's not fixing that hole in their lives. It's not making their situation any better. So they're just getting like more and more pissed.
Some of them, well, especially the ones that are like online, like making content, as it were, something like that.
Yeah,
it's shrimp bombs, something like that. So he had to be angry about something because that's what his audience wants as well. Yeah. And as we all know as well, that like anger is a much more motivating factor in like social media as well. That's what gets the most clicks and most interaction because it is motivating, as it were. Oh, happy doesn't sell, which is why.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Well, once you get to the point what I mean being is like in a creator mode or something like that, or to get to like a network position, at that point, for the most part, I think they know their bullshit.
Okay. I agree with you. I agree.
I mean, like these people are like, what the hell? We made those people's lives a living hell, and it didn't make my life any better. I thought it was a zero-sum game. I thought I was supposed to get what they had.
Yeah,
it's not going that way.
Exactly. That's a good point.
I mean, it's that. Well, and it's that. I mean, they have nothing else to go to. Like they don't have. It's their one trick is for the people for the politicians and the commentators and who are trying to reach them as an audience. They only have one move. And the people that they're in that audience, they've been conditioned to only have one reaction, which is to just be angry and
not just to be angry, but to be angry at somebody that they think they can affect.
Yeah,
like so much of it is like realizing there's a problem, realizing there are people that are hurting them, but also kind of realizing that they can't touch them, so they have to find somebody they can affect, somebody they can hurt.
Well, that's a lot of how much I knew I was wrong 10 minutes ago, but I'm arguing to make you angry going on in that whole bottleneck too.
Yeah.
I mean, well, I think the difference between liberals and conservatives basically comes down to is a liberal is willing to reconsider the evidence and look to see if they're wrong.
We just
they're not expansive words.
And ideally, liberals and progressives and pretty much everybody to the left of conservatives, for the most part, and this isn't always true, unfortunately, but people on that side, on our side of the equation, are more willing to at least entertain the possibility that maybe they are part of the problem and they should change something about what they're doing. And a big part of the conservative sales pitch, especially in the Trump era, but even, going back way before that, Reagan was big on this too, was basically, you didn't do anything wrong. You shouldn't have to change. You know, the other people over there, they need to change. You don't. You're perfect. Exactly. You're perfect. Just, and of course, all the great main characters are the ones who don't change at all during the story, right?
Life is a movie, and you're the protagonist.
And the world is simple too.
Yes,
that's another thing. That's like it's like, and a lot of conservatives people or reactionaries as well, they have difficulty with ambiguity as a word too.
Yeah,
and so it's going back to like object permanence. They like also have like concrete thinking as it were.
Black and white morality.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's because like, and that's why they get you at like trans people as were. Well, if a woman can have a penis, and then what does that make me? If this becomes the new normal, what's that mean? It's like you're fine.
It makes you whatever you were before. Like, just relax.
Doesn't change anything.
I think people need to understand is that, you know, for a middle class, you know, cis white family, you know, life today is prima facie less comfortable from an economic perspective. Forget everything else. Than it was 40 years ago. It just is. The fact of the matter is, cost of living has gone up and real wages have not gone up. So they're looking at their parents' generation and they're saying something's broken. And so the conservative reactionary politicians who are like, I'll tell you what's broken is these trans people. Rather than looking at a system that has, you know, created a continuation of cost of living increases without the requisite, you know, increase in wages.
The problem is they think that it's not the new normal. It's a normal. There can be more than one kind of normal, but they all think, no, there can only be one kind of normal, and it has to be me. I have to be the middle.
My comfort must be served.
It perfectly defines conservatives' outlook on things. It's near the end of the novel after Gatsby's shot, where Nick Carraway says he paid too high a price for living too long with a single dream. And that kind of that really hit me hard when I read it the first time, and it reminds me of people who hang on to old ideas.
Can you
because to get a new idea, you have to let go of the old one.
Yeah, the whole the whole. Hang on a second. The whole like one of the main points of Gatsby, not, you know, there's many different interpretations you can take from it, but like the tragedy of Gatsby as a character is that he thinks he can have things the way they used to be. And you can't. Like, that's one of the major points of the book. You can't do that. I mean, there's a scene where they literally say that. It's one of the most obvious like scenes in the book, where it's like Fitzgerald is telling you, here's what this is about, so pay attention. When Nick literally says to Gatsby, you can't repeat the past, and Gatsby says to him, what are you talking about? Of course you can. And that's his tragedy. And with Gatsby, it's framed in more of a romantic context because he wants to have what he used to have with Daisy, but it applies to everything. If your goal in life is to take things the way they are now and force them to be the way they were in the past when you like things better, you're doomed to fail. That's not going to happen. You can't do that. Life doesn't work that way.
You know, it's fascinating to me though. Look, Steve, I'm sorry. I'm going to talk about Lord of the Rings for a sec. Don't hurt me.
I'll somebody wake me up when he's done.
Look, most fantasy stories are about protecting a status quo, about, you know, preserving the fantasy, that escapism. It's like, oh, some vast evil is threatening to destroy the magic. We must save the magic. But Lord of the Rings is the opposite. The further back you go, the more magical it is, the more huge and ridiculous everything it is. And over time, it winds down until you get to the, you know, the actual story where almost all that magical stuff is gone. The elves are leaving. The tree people are leaving. The shape-shifting bear people are leaving. The dragons are all gone. Every remotely magical or interesting thing is leaving so it can transition into the boring, flavorless, stupid world that we live in. But the thing is, you actually want that to happen in this case, because if it stays a fantasy world, it'll be a terrible, evil, shitty one that's like horrible forever. So that's just fascinating to me, that it's a case where, yeah, you kind of want the fantasy to end so that something else can begin, because most fantasy stories do not go that way. It's about, like soothing the reader, like, don't worry, this is always going to be here for you.
Yeah.
I just find that fascinating.
Legend of Zelda works by that principle as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there have been some hands up for a while. So Isaiah, your hand's been up for forever. So sorry about that. What do you have to say?
So I guess as a quick distraction,
yes,
I have been watching X-Files VHSs.
Oh, wow! Oh man, that takes me back.
Mm-hmm.
So
what episodes are on those?
Well, I got a bunch. This is Pilot and Deep Throat right here.
Okay.
And this one is Squeeze and Tombs. And I was going to make a joke, but because Tombs kills people every 30 some years, but he's dead. Because so I was gonna make like a joke to you, Steve, because you live in Maryland, right?
I do.
So does Tombs, or he used to. So
that's right.
I was like, better be safe, because isn't Tombs
coming up?
I should watch myself. Yeah, that was one of the cool things about watching the X-Files is like, because they never shot any of it around here, but because they were based in DC, like a lot of the stories took place in this sort of general area. They were in Virginia or Maryland or Pennsylvania or something. And I remember there was an episode. It was either an episode of the X-Files or Millennium. I can't remember which one, but it might have been Millennium actually. But the first scene was supposed to take place in Hagerstown. And I watched it at the time when it first came on, and I was like, Hagerstown. Oh, I had the reaction that The Rock would make fun of when he was a heel in wrestling. That's where I'm from. Hagerstown. And
there's an episode here that they didn't, so like they say it was filmed in near Tallahassee where I live, but it was actually filmed in Canada. But like they use
it's cheaper up here, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, hey Canada! I didn't know you were in the audience.
Yeah. From Ottawa, the capital.
Yeah. Big time Canada.
Capital, yeah.
And so there's that. Also, isn't Dana Scully supposed to be head of the FBI by now? Because they also like name drop that in the episode too.
Yeah. Not according to the revival series. she wasn't even in the FBI anymore until they started things back up.
She's Hannibal Lecter's boy or girlfriend now.
That's she switched sides. You're allowed to do that.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
One constant in the universe.
Yeah, it's been a long time. She got bored catching the crook. She said, I'm just going to hang out with Hannibal for a while. Fuck it.
I think one of the things I like about the X-Files is how like it combines science fiction with mysticism, with some politics, and then there's of course like the law enforcement part of it.
Yeah.
It definitely like combines a lot of like things you wouldn't think would fit in a TV show, like in one whole TV show, and just completely like just upends that, and like it's like.
Yeah, it's real mix of genres, eh?
And it's led by two characters that I would absolutely follow to the ends of the earth.
Oh
yes, exactly.
Like Mulder and Scully are two of my favorite TV characters ever. I would watch them go grocery shopping if they wanted to do an episode about that. Like they are so great. But yeah, X-Files is one of my favorite shows ever. When it was on for
They're better with the standalone episodes when they have the conspiracy. That's Chris Carpenter didn't know where he was going with that, honestly.
Especially later on, like after there was a point in like season 5 when he could have just wrapped it up.
Yeah,
and moved on to something else. And man, I wish he had done that instead of saying we're going to keep this going forever. Like, no, dude, just stop it. You have a perfect opportunity here to just wrap this all up with a bow and then keep the show going with something else. But
it made too much money by that point.
Also, I read somewhere that he basically read on the early internet in the 1990s that people were expecting these big mysteries. So he felt like, oh, I guess I have to craft the big mysteries because that's what the audience wants.
I would say right after like Fight the Future, it should have ended. Like we'd already reached of this virus thing and all that. Why did we need to keep
the movie? Yeah. The movie, because the movie happened in the middle of the series. The movie should have been where they wrapped up the alien stuff. and said, okay, now the shows are going to continue, because the case of the week episodes were almost always the best ones anyway.
Yes.
And if you want to do another like long-term story arc to kind of replace the alien stuff, like, just come up with something else. Instead of dragging this thing out.
My favorite X-Files episode was the episode where Fox was having the Groundhog Day thing. He kept waking up in the waterbed.
What about X-Files?
It was raining and he got shot at a bank or something. I have to look that up.
It got to be one of those shows where, and I mean, MacGyver was like this too, but in a completely different way, because the X-Files was legitimately a great show. MacGyver is a good, bad show, but X-Files was legitimately a great show. But they both had this quality where you felt like they could make an episode about anything they wanted. Like they could do an X-Files about anything they wanted. It didn't have to. Yeah, they did the cops episode.
That cops episode was good.
They did episodes. Some of the episodes they did the alien stuff. They did serial killers. They did like genetic freaks. They did cryptids.
A baseball episode.
They did a baseball episode. They did time travel. They did vampires and werewolves and supernatural stuff and horror stuff. Like they could do anything they wanted to do. Because it was,
that's what happens when your characters are that well written. You can just transpose them in any setting, and it will be entertaining.
They did one like in season 1 about like the space shuttle being sabotaged, and they name dropped Challenger in it, and I was like, come on, really?
Yeah.
But anyway, Russell, you had
Russell, your hands up.
Yeah, because we're like 8 minutes left.
We're running out of daylight.
Casual 8 minutes.
Running daylight.
Okay, so I wanted to go back to a comment that was made about, I don't know, socialism or class. Social class. What's considered
class struggle?
Poverty, middle class, and upper class? What do you guys consider?
If we don't, I don't know if we had time to like for everyone to give their opinion on that, but it's just like, because like to me it's just like working class or like capitalist class.
Yeah, basically my definition is that anybody that needs to work for a wage.
Yeah, anyone's working for a wage is working class.
Yeah, there's some overlap. Like poverty is referring to a particular level of income that people live on, but the terms like working class, like that can cover people from multiple different economic strata.
That's not necessarily socioeconomic. That's more about what the work is.
Right.
There's also like the white working class, which is used to like, I guess, differentiate between the work. Like it's like, the white work, which with the white working class, it's more of an image than it is an actual group of people. It's like a white guy, burly white guy with it's more of an image than it is like an actual like political like
economic.
I did social work for about 20 years. I helped people apply for government assistance, rental assistance, jobs, all sorts of programs like that. And the thing I have found is consistently, basically since the 90s, is that people have not, things are getting more expensive. Money is getting smaller and smaller. It's not worth as much. Yeah. And when you talk to somebody my age who's talking to somebody who's in their 30s and they say, well, I'm making $20 an hour. And the person my age says, well, when I was your age, I didn't make that much money and I could live. Yeah, well, rent has tripled. And, everything is much more expensive. Price of food alone would be enough to drive you.
They don't take into account purchasing power has eroded.
Yeah.
Well, that's a result of inflation, I think.
Inflation is because of like the corporations like up their prices as it were too.
And it's going up too fast.
Government doesn't
corporations. Yeah, government doesn't drive inflation. I mean, I'm sure there are things government can do that can affect it, but the government is not the primary cause of inflation.
The thing is that there was some initially
balloon.
There was some actual inflation at first,
but then corporations took advantage of it to basically gouge everybody. Exactly. I mean, it was like I order like DoorDash and shit like that a lot, and you go, if you eat out a lot, you notice there's things that have gone up, like even a soda, like bottles of soda. Water didn't get precipitously more expensive in the real world, but they're
right.
doubled the price of a bottle of soda. And I'm not talking about the little ones. I'm talking about the big ones, the 2 liters. They're $3. They used to be $1.50 like 2 years ago.
They don't need to charge anywhere near what they are. They're just choosing to.
Right.
And because they can get away with it because they know people will pay it.
Yeah. Well, another thing too is that employers are basically saying, well, if you work with us for a couple of years, we'll give you a raise, and then you can afford, it's the whole company store thing is going on. In a lot of these
yeah.
All right, they expect you to work for minimum wage,
Russell,
and then
okay, Russell, you're trying to break back in, so go. What do you? Sorry, go ahead.
Okay,
no, go ahead.
In 1983, my parents bought a home because we were expanding our family. 1983, my dad bought a home for $28,000.
Yeah.
Okay. Minimum wage back then, which my dad didn't make minimum wage, he made more because he worked for the state, but that's beside the point. 28,000. Minimum wage was $1.70. Today's minimum wage is $13.50. The home that my parents lived, that we grew up in, today's economy is $269,000 on the retail market.
The federal
minimum wage is $7.50.
Yeah, it depends where you live. Yeah, the federal minimum wage in the United States is $7.50. The state minimum wage where I live is $15, but that's still not all that much.
No, but also what I'm saying is that the federal in 1983 was $3.35, not $1.70.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
I'm saying it doesn't compensate. $12 an hour, $13 an hour. That's about $22,000 a year. An increase. Okay. And my dad's home was 28, and now it's worth 100 or 269 grand. Come on. Can't own homes.
Yeah, What do you call it?
It's ridiculous. Yeah, it's ridiculous. No, I agree.
The thing I don't get is, how do these companies expect to keep themselves afloat when nobody can afford anything anymore because they don't pay anybody anything?
And this is the big problem. This is why I've been saying for quite a long time that capitalists are actually ruining capitalism, because if money, what makes a market economy work at all is the free exchange of money. And if money gets concentrated up at the top and the people at the bottom can't afford to buy anything, the whole fucking thing falls apart.
But this is where it got interesting for me is the moment
for capitalists.
This was an eye opener for me, though. The day I realized that capitalists, it's not an ideology, it's not a belief system, it's a position. I used to think that, oh well, if you believe in capitalism, then you're a capitalist. No, a capitalist refers to the guy who owns the factory, the rich people who actually control things. You can support them, but you're ultimately just a worker still. You can support them, but that doesn't make you one of them.
And the thing, like the point that Joe was making, that I think is a really great point, that it frustrates me to no end that more people don't get this, especially people like, not just, the business people and the politicians, on the right, but even just normal everyday working people who are against raising wages, against the government raising the minimum wage, against, doing anything that would put money into poor people's pockets. What do you like if people who don't have money get money, they're not going to put it under their mattress. Right. Like, they need it because they need to get things with the money. That's why they're poor, because they can't afford to get things that they need to live and to survive and to be comfortable. If you give them that money, they're going to spend it on shit. They're going to put it back into the economy. They're not just going to hoard it.
Well, the same thing with the government spending. Because here's the thing that the right wing especially does not understand. They seem to think that the government takes money as taxes, like it's lost to the economy, but that's not true. Yeah. Because most of what the government doesn't like build bridges. The government has bridges built. They pay money to build bridges and to fix the roads and all this kind of stuff.
They issue bonds and
so they hire
contractors.
I'm working on a lot of municipal projects for municipal water and wastewater, So the government's paying, to these, municipalities, and then they're paying company, general contractors, and they're paying, and those guys are paying guys like me to do the control system, and I pay my workers, and I spend money, my workers spend money, and it goes back into the economy. So it's not like it evaporates.
No,
I want. You go ahead.
Well, it also goes to the Ukraine thing, because people argue they were shipping all this money to Ukraine. No, we're paying people here to build the arms that we're then going to ship.
Right. Okay. Lessons learned. You were trying to say something. Go for it.
Yeah. Not only that bridge also makes, if it's government made or contract, it's a lower price than somebody building a private bridge. Everybody has access to it. And all the commerce that goes through it, from people going to work to the trucks that go to get the food to Walmart before everything spoils, have to go through that bridge. So
and that's the thing that kills the stupid argument that the libertarians make, that, well, if it was all left to private industry, they would just build the roads. No, actually, when it was left to private industry back 100 years ago, 150, 120 years ago, they didn't. They petitioned the government and say, hey, those people with cars can get to my store a lot more easy and buy my
products. Have real world examples.
Build me some roads so they can get to me, and I can ship products across the roads easier instead of
Firefighters a business where your workers are on food stamps, you should be taxed higher.
Firefighters are another example. They used to only respond to people who could pay them, but then they realized, oh shit, the fire doesn't know to stop like those houses. It switched to all the houses. So then
this should be a public thing. Okay.
To the point that the richest man in sorry.
No, go ahead, please. Go ahead. You were so excited to say that.
To the point that the richest person in Rome was actually the head of the firefighters, because when you could charge for firefighting, that was such an important service that anyone would pay any amount for it.
Yeah. Okay. There are two people.
Hey, I understand you don't want a fire here.
Sure would be a shame if this place was to burn down.
There are two Coliseum you got here.
There are two people with hands up. I want to get to you both real quick, but first, one point I want to make about this topic, and then we'll get to the hands, and then I'm ending the show. But one of the most frustrating conversations I think I've ever had with a conservative person was, we were arguing about what ended the Great Depression in the United States. And this conservative person was adamant that it was not government spending that had ended the Great Depression. He believed it was World War II. And I said, what? And I said, I said, what about World War II ended the Depression? And he said, well, the war put everybody back to work. And I said, how did that happen? And did it just magically happen? Or was it the government putting people to work to serve the war effort?
Isn't there like a quote from the time that it would do as much economic good if, instead of sending these battleships off to war, we were just building them and then sinking them in the port? Like, God, somebody said that at the time.
It's very much a Craig T. Nelson situation.
Exactly.
I was on welfare, but no one helped me.
So much of it is how you frame it, and a lot of these conservative people's minds, like, military spending somehow doesn't count as government spending. Like, even though that's the thing the government spends more money on than anything, but they're completely fine with that. So in their mind, like, well, it was the war. Right, but the government paid for the war and paid people to fight the war and build the material that they needed to fight the war. So it was government spending, bud, at the bottom of it. Like, we spent a bunch of money and put a bunch of people to work to fight the war. So it's not like the war just magically fixed everything. But,
even if it did, it's not something we should want.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Geek, your hand's been up for a while. Go for it.
This is a good opportunity just to and yes, Russell, I'm putting the links into the chat right now, because Phoenix is has bills piling up and getting laid, and they're they have no way to pay for them. They have no income, and like the caseworker that like was given to them ruined their life because like, well, why are you asking for like a TDAP, like temporary disability assistance program, blah. You have a Patreon as well. They only got like $27 from the Patreon, 25 from me, and it's like, but then had to close that down and like had to like show receipts that like these are the people that were giving me money as it were. I had to like get a screenshot of my bank statement. It's like, yes, I given Phoenix this much money in this time period as well too. This is my statement, sign. And so they've been like really struggling on that and that sort of thing too. So that's just one person. There's Joey Firelame. They're still trying to avoid homelessness, but like the GoFundMe is there as well as like other links to the two. And Joe Roberts, like, so on Friday, Joe and Roberts shared a screenshot on Tumblr that they're at negative $73 in their checking account. So then, but then like, so then I did blast the Begging Bowl, which is right there in the chat as well. And then like, but then the next day, Saturday, it was now at $153 and negative as well too. Or like, no, $120 and negative as well too. Yay, overdraft fees, punishing poor for being poor.
Yeah,
so,
charge people money that you know they don't have.
So I just gave her $150 or charged my credit card by $150, which I can't afford. Is because it's at the maximum limit now. So that's taken care of, but they still need. Joanne still needs food for like the rest of the week because she doesn't get paid until like the first, hopefully, because it usually is on the first of the month or like the next business day as well too. So like there you go. That's my spiel. That's something done. I'll post the promotional links later. Right as Patrick. Hello, Patrick. You're new here.
Yes, Patrick's hand has been up. So. Go for it, Patrick.
Hello, Mr. Shives.
Hello, sir.
For all you do, a start.
Hello, Mr.
Shives.
Stroking a cat.
I know they're apples and oranges, an ensemble versus a solo record, so to speak. But the series finale of Deep Space Nine and The Next Generation, which one has a fonder place in your heart?
Oh, the TNG finale.
Yeah, I would say
the TNG finale easily. Yeah, well, I mean, I have actually, you know, when it first aired, I didn't like the Deep Space Nine finale. I was really not happy with it. I've rewatched it since, and I have a fonder feeling for it now. But I think my problem with the Deep Space Nine finale was that it was so centered on just wrapping up the storylines that it didn't really have that sense that All Good Things has of being like All Good Things feels like it feels like this is the cumulative statement for this whole series. Like it's not just plot stuff, it's not just wrap up storylines, it's okay, here's a statement emotionally, thematically, you know, touching on these characters. Here's like our attempt to sum up what this whole show has been about, and it does that beautifully. And Deep Space Nine's finale, I mean, look, I love that it's built around the concept of everybody saying goodbye. I love that they chose to split the cast up and have most of them go to different places. Like that has a lot of resonance, and that gives it a great sense of conclusion. You know, we've seen these people become such good friends, you know, over the last 7 years, and now they're leaving, they're going to be apart from each other. You know, that works really well. And the final shot of Jake standing there at the window, like looking at the wormhole, thinking of his father, is amazing. But on the whole, like it's so much of it is based on let's wrap up the war, you know, let's wrap up Dukat and Cisco, and then let's make sure that we have everybody dispersed to be like, there's just, it doesn't have
it's a checklist.
It's just the parts, not the sum of the parts.
Yeah, and it's not bad. Like I like it a lot better now than I used to, but man, All Good Things is just fantastic. Is like the perfect
one thing
on that.
Hang on a second, Russell. I'll get to you in a second. Sorry, no, Nick, you're gonna say something.
I was just going to recommend the story Star Trek Forgiveness. It's a graphic novel. I don't know if it was based on a text novel, but I read the comic version. It was great. It felt somewhere between an episode and a movie. It takes place during the movies. They had the restraint not to force Worf in there by taking him away from Deep Space Nine. And it's about somebody who essentially invented the first transporter like a half a century before anyone else did, but wound up like beamed into space, and it's this big mystery, and again, it's got those themes of forgiveness. It's a really good short story. I highly recommend it.
I saw you posted on Twitter about it. Yeah, yeah. I'll try to remember.
It was
to
a great story.
Yeah. Okay. Serious Mind, you had your hand up.
Yeah. Two things. I want to kind of harken back to a couple things that people said real quick. Yeah. So about the firefighters, I think it was in Tennessee. It might have been Kentucky, but it was some, red state. Anyway, so this community did that. They said, okay, it's an opt-in, and you have to pay a fee to get fire protection. So it's one family, they opted out because they were, why am I want to put money? My house isn't on fire yet, so why am I paying for fire service? So then their house caught on fire, and they call up, and nothing they did. They said, we'll pay $1,000, we'll do anything, and that was the weird part of that. Even though they were willing to pony up well more than what they would have had to in the first place, they refused to come out anyway. And then, of course, and so their house burnt down. And then, of course, as somebody else said, fire doesn't know who paid, so it did jump to the next house and did a fair bit of damage. And they came and they were able to put the fire out and save the house. But I'm like, I would rather pay a few bucks extra to make sure that my neighbor's house doesn't burn down, on the off chance that the wind might shift and catch my house on fire. And that's the thing. It's just vested self-interest. You don't even have to be altruistic. You could just be selfish, and it's still in your interest to help other people.
Enlightened self-interest.
Or your neighbors aren't so desperate that they need to steal things from your house.
And actually, that's a good point. Somebody said insurance, because that's the thing. Your insurance rates are affected by your neighborhood. If they see a lot of houses burning down, they're going to
property value as well. If you invested in your house,
home values. That's right. So it all it all comes back to you in the end. There's a YouTuber who is now in jail for essay against children, and but he was a libertarian, and he was like saying,
of course,
why should I have to pay for health insurance? I don't want to pay for health insurance. We're not sick. And so he fought to get off of his school's health insurance program, and then family members got sick, and he was on YouTube begging for money. And like, hey, dickhead, if you would just, and the thing is, I had a long conversation with him just privately about this. I'm like, dude, it's because you don't know what's going to happen. It could be you tomorrow. And it was. And then he was like, oh, who's going to help me? Like, well, fuck you, asshole.
Like that's the whole.
You're an island. You just take care of it yourself.
That's right. Exactly. That's the whole point of insurance, douchebag. You don't know what's going to happen.
And then secondly, with the bank fees, real quick, personal story. When I moved back to New Jersey, I was broke. And when my wife-to-be came live with me, and she was broke. And I had an account that we moved, and I forgot about this account. And so if your balance fell below a certain amount, which wasn't a lot, we were really broke, they would charge you $5 a month in fees. So then the account went negative, and then they started charging me $5 a day. A day. So I went to go settle the account, and I'm like, I get a notice that it says I'm $15 in arrears. I'm like, what's that all about? So I go there, and by the time I got there, they're like, oh, you owe us $123. Like, what? And we didn't. That was breaking my back at the time, and it was like, how does this make sense? I think basically I pretty much burst into tears, and the person felt so bad that they talked to the manager, and they got most of the late fees waived. I still had to pay some of them, but it was like, what are you gonna do? I'm like, literally, like, oh, you're condemning me to bankruptcy because I can't come up. If you're gonna keep tacking on $5 a day, I'm never gonna catch up.
Fuck the poor.
Exactly.
I had a similar circumstance when I went through a bank that was in Walmart, and then they just moved out of the Walmart. So I essentially just went over to another bank and put what I thought was all of my recurring things on other accounts, forgetting this one that renewed just once a year. And 2 years later, when I was trying to do a car loan, I get this thing. It's like, well, we can't. You have a outstanding negative bank account here. And it's like, I haven't banked there, and I essentially closed all my accounts without technically closing it 4 years ago.
Oof. Okay, Russell, your hand's up. Let's see what you have to say, and then that's it. That's it. You hear me? That's it.
No more.
No more.
The line has to be drawn here. I go further.
Exactly. Go for it, Russell.
What was I thinking?
You had your hand up once when like Steve was like asked the question about like which is the better finale, Deep Space Nine or like TNG.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Were you the one who cried out in anguish when I said I liked the TNG one better?
I owe you a favor.
Yes.
I owe you. Okay. When TNG finale aired, it was pretty much apparent that they were going to do film series.
Yeah.
That was not the conclusion. When DS9 ended, they ended the show perfectly, in my opinion. Because TNG had the movie series to follow, I think DS9's finale is the best. Man, I love DS9. It is the best of all Star Trek ever.
I agree.
And that's new content, even though I do like Discovery. But I don't know why TNG gets more love than DS9. Steve,
as a series as a whole
with that?
TNG was I mean, part of it is TNG was always more popular than DS9. Like TNG, once people accepted TNG, once they got over the fact that it wasn't Captain Kirk and that it was a different show, and they embraced it.
Season 1. They got over season.
Yeah. Once the show got good. I mean, look, I agree with. I agree with you. I think Deep Space Nine is a better show, and always was a better show. But TNG, Deep Space Nine challenged what Star Trek was. Deep Space Nine got to a point where it was comfortable not just being political, but being critical of Star Trek.
Yes.
And telling you, maybe the things that other Star Trek shows have told you aren't really true. Maybe the Federation isn't as perfect as they've said it was. Maybe the enemies of the Federation might sometimes have a point. Or at least it's more complicated than, well, they're bad and we're good. And a lot of people just didn't sign up for that. And, I mean, as great as TNG is, and I love TNG, but TNG's morality is a lot less complex.
It's also slightly cozier, I'd say. Just the atmosphere and the characters.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the ship, the Enterprise on TNG is like this incredibly comfortable place. Everybody seems happy. Everybody seems cool. Deep Space Nine is exactly the opposite. Like, it's a very hostile environment. It's not even like they're not even supposed to be there. It was a Cardassian station. It was built during this brutal military occupation.
It's Cardassian architecture.
Yeah,
it has self-sealing stem bolts.
Self-sealing stem bolts, which nobody even knows what those are, and they're everywhere.
But scenes in DS9's Emissary is the scene where Cisco meets Kira, and he picks up the garbage and then shows her.
I'm willing to get my hands dirty.
I'm willing to get dirty.
Yeah. And also, and speaking of the first episode, like that, my favorite part of the first episode of Deep Space Nine, it makes it absolutely clear that the hero of this new show hates Captain Picard.
Yes.
And that is a gutsy move, because by that point, that was season 6 of TNG. Captain Picard was everybody's hero. Everybody loved Captain Picard. He was, especially for people who had come of age during TNG, who didn't have like a pre-existing attachment to Captain Kirk. Like, Captain Picard was everybody's guy. And here's the lead character of this new show who's very much, hey, fuck Captain Picard. Fuck him.
That would have been like in the first episode of TNG, Picard saying, like, musing about Kirk, saying, like, yeah, that guy was a maniac. He should have been
exactly. If Patrick Stewart had lines in the first episode of TNG where he just turns to Riker out of nowhere and says, and by the way, fuck Captain Kirk. Fuck that guy. Fuck him.
By the way, what episode is it? It's AR some numbers.
Please, the Siege of AR something. I can't remember the numbers, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's Quark's message to Nog about the message you take away human comforts, and they'll turn into any savage, bloodthirsty Klingon.
Yeah,
made that show so realistic to me.
Yeah, but also makes it less comforting, like makes it less inviting. Like it's more challenging to viewers. And I think a lot of people who got used to TNG being the way it was. Oh, I agree. And I think that makes it a better show, but it also accounts for why it was less popular.
Yeah, because it was a show where everyone was
okay, we're now 80 minutes in.
Yeah, I know. I will say this. I will say this, Russell. You made the point about, when Deep Space Nine ended, we all knew that was really the end, because that show wasn't going to continue. Whereas we all knew TNG was going to do movie, was at least going to do one movie. And it was the same year. Like TNG ended on TV in May, and then the movie came out in November. So like we didn't even have a chance to miss them. Like the movie came out, not too much longer than the next season would have started if it had just done another year of TV. But I think that's why they had to do All Good Things the way they did. I think it actually worked out better for the end of the series, because they knew they couldn't do a definitive ending in terms of plot, because they had to keep everything more or less the same way it was to pick up when the movie started, because they wanted the movie to pick up where the show left off with no time having passed. So they couldn't do an ending like Deep Space Nine does, where like a bunch of the characters leave the Enterprise, because they knew that's not, I mean, they could have, maybe they should have, but they knew that, but they didn't want to go that direction for the movie. They wanted the first movie to pick up right after the end of the show, where everybody was still in their normal places on the Enterprise. So they couldn't do that. So they had to do something else. And that's what I think they came up with for All Good. And that's why I think All Good Things work so great as a final episode, because it's not about wrapping up plot lines. It's about sort of making a capstone statement for the entire series. And that's something that no other Star Trek show has really even attempted to do since, and certainly hasn't succeeded at doing.
So one thing I just want to say real quick about, you said about the first episode when Sisko makes it clear that how much he hates Picard. What's interesting about that too is that it's also a statement. It's not really a statement about Picard. It's a statement about what trauma does to somebody. Because if you think about it, it's not really fair, right? It wasn't Picard who did that.
It's not fair.
It was Locutus who did it. But of course, if you're on the receiving end of some trauma, you don't care. Because you're still hurt.
Yeah, and I think the episode makes that clear enough. Like you see that you just the way Patrick Stewart plays that moment when Sisko says, we met in battle at Wolf 359, and Picard has that. He just kind of like, oh, okay, this is going to be one of those interactions, And especially if you've been watching TNG, it wasn't really Picard's fault. It's not fair to blame Picard for that, because he wasn't really in control. But like Sisko's wife died.
He still pushed the button.
You were in charge, and my ship blew up, and my wife died. So fuck you. And you can understand why Sisko feels that way, even though it's not rational and it's not fair to Picard. Sisko doesn't care.
One of the Picard season 3 got right was Shaw.
Shaw's monologue was it's like, hey, I don't
beautiful.
It's like, I know that you're not really that guy, but I still see that guy when I look at you. Like you were still there, and you still did that, even if it wasn't really you.
I like DS9.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you, patrons, for clarifying that. That's beautiful to me.
Thank you for asking.
The difference between the capstone of the continuity and the capstone of the spirit of the show is where that lies, and it's sad that more series don't end with the spirit like that. Not even just more Star Trek, like just series in general.
Exactly.
Because it's not about what brings you, what makes you care, at least for me, and I think this is true of a lot of people. If you watch a show and you stick with it for a 5, 6, 7 year run or more, and you're still watching it by the time you get to the end of the episode, and you've been watching it, it's not like you just binged it on Netflix and you watched it all in a couple of weeks. You watched it in real time as it was being released over the years, and you're still there watching it. It's mostly probably because you care about those characters. You might be invested in some of the storylines. You might want to see how a particular plot wraps up. But if you're still there at the end, if you watch The Fugitive in the 60s, okay, you want to see if he catches the one-armed man. You want to see how it works out, but you want Richard Kimball to clear his name because you care about him and you know he didn't do it, and you want him to be okay. Like, you want him to be free and to be able to go off and live his life because you know he has been unfairly persecuted. It's about the character. It's not about the plot. The plot is just incidental, you know, and that's the point that's the point that All Good Things gets, that, you know, the Deep Space Nine gets too, but spends less time on. You know,
but neither of them will ever beat Sleeping in Light.
Yes,
that's a good episode. That's a really good episode.
And
that's a really
in support of Steve's statement, I think Undiscovered Country was the best conclusion to a Star Trek series.
And again, it kind of did both. You know, it kind of did everything that we want Star Trek to do, because it had the political aspect. It dealt with like long running stuff that went, you know, the Federation versus Klingon stuff that went all the way back to the original series. It touched on things that had been mentioned for the future from TNG, but it didn't, you know, get too preoccupied with that. You know, it touched on Kirk's feelings about Klingons and his unresolved feelings about the murder of his son, and, you know, how people need to change with the times, like we talked about on this stream earlier. Like, yeah, it does the thematic stuff and the plot stuff.
A great metaphor.
Yeah. And it's just a really great fucking movie. Like, even if you don't give a shit about Star Trek, it's just a great sci-fi adventure movie.
Love it. It's great.
And a great reflection of the time as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Northern Star.
Oh man, Christopher Plummer just chewing all the scenery in sight.
I would pay him real money. I would pay him real money if he could shut up.
If he would shut up.
I want to see Shakespeare in the original Klingon so bad.
And again, yes, and great totally nonsensical Nicholas Meyer jokes. Like I want to see, you know, Shakespeare is the best in the original Klingon. Makes no fucking sense at all. But or Spock saying, an ancestor of mine said, if you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. So wait a minute. So Sherlock Holmes, who has been previously established in Star Trek as a fictional character, is also an ancestor of Spock? That doesn't make sense. And I'm sure Nicholas Meyer was like, I don't fucking care. It's going in the movie. Fuck it. Work it out amongst yourselves. Work it out amongst yourselves. It's not my problem. So anyway, all right.
I'll go cry havoc and let's reach the dogs of war, but let's end the show. So Steve,
yes,
it's patreon.com/Steve Shives. So like you can become a patron of like Steve and like get a chance to like join these Patreon and member hangouts. But also, if you don't want to go Patreon, click the join button that's below this like a stream right now. The next Patreon hangout will be March 31st, the very last day of March.
And not just like Steve, not just like Steve, 2, 4, and at Steve.
Too long.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
March the 31st, both my birthday and Easter this year.
Hey, well, it's going to be a big day.
Yeah. So March 31st will be the next one, but also becoming a member and patron. You show appreciation to Steve Shives. He puts a lot of work in the video that he does and stuff like that. But also you get the access to these Patreon member hangouts and get the chance to ask pre-submitted questions to the Ask Away, which there's going to be one this Friday. What else have we had?
This Friday?
This Friday. Yes, this Friday.
Okay.
I got one more thing to add.
Go for it, Isaiah.
Real quick, yes.
So in April, I'm actually gonna go visit Tulsa, Oklahoma to see Fred Hayes.
Oh, cool!
Wow,
the actual Fred Hayes.
Yes, from Apollo 13. Yes, except the real guy. That's awesome. That's awesome. That's so cool.
And I also here's my in the back, there's the 80s flight suit that I'm working on.
Nice.
That looks really cool.
All right. So, all right. The charity links that page, please help out. Not only Phoenix, Joanna, and Joey that I mentioned, and their links are in the chat, but their links are also in charity link that page. Please check that out. And Steve, I think it's time to end the show.
I think you're right. Thanks for your permission. Thank you for doing the wrap up, by the way. That was very well done. You've heard me say it a million times. You can probably do it in your sleep. So thanks everybody for joining us this month. Thanks everybody for being a patron or a member. And we'll be back next month on March 31st. So I hear to do another one of these. So we'll see you then. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.